Take two. Welcome everyone to the July 2024 meeting of the Davis Police Accountability Commission meeting. I will, I guess, start from our other end and do roll call, and then we will welcome at the other end of our roll call our newest member. So Commissioner Canning, Commissioner Sherman,
Here.
Commissioner Escamilla Greenwald,
Present.
myself, Chair Horton is here, Vice Chair Griswold, Commissioner Myers, Commissioner Bliss. All right, and I think Kelly, are you gonna do the swearing in of our newest member?
Well, she has the piece of paper. So I'm going to trust Angela Wilson, our newest member who was here at the last meeting. But to be official this evening, if you can go ahead and read that lovely oath that I know you've read before, please put the mic on so we can record it for posterity's sake.
State of California, County of Yola, City of Davis. I, Angela Wilson, with 2 L's, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservations or purposes of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. And this is on July 1, 2024.
Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind signing that, I'll collect it at the end of the meeting. I appreciate it. You are officially the PAC alternate. This evening, there is a full group, so you participate fully in all the conversation, but not in a vote.
Welcome once again, Commissioner Wilson. I know you introduced yourself at the last meeting and you were welcomed by our colleagues, at least who were there at the last meeting, but welcome once again, and we're glad to have you on the team. Let's go on to approval of the agenda. Anyone want to make a motion for approval of this evening's agenda? Is there a second? Is there any further discussion on that? All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. Any abstentions? All right, agenda approved. Let's move on to brief announcements from city staff. Kelly.
Welcome to summer. We are officially here. In all seriousness, though, a couple of weeks ago, the city did celebrate and acknowledge our very first formal and official Juneteenth on June 19th. And then this coming week, city offices will again be closed for the July 4th festivities. So those are mainly occurring in Community Park for anybody who's interested in that. If you are in my world, this is also New Year's. So today is July 1. It's the beginning of our fiscal year. And we run a fiscal year July 1 to June 30th. So it's our new budget is in place. Since the last meeting of the PAC, the council also did finalize the change ups to some of the commissions. This commission does not have any major changes, has a slightly new authorizing resolution, which I'm now realizing as I'm saying this that I didn't put in your packet, but I will send that out to you. You looked at it at the last meeting. We do have some new combinations of commissions with slightly new directions or focuses. And that was the conclusion of a fairly lengthy effort by the council to look at aligning commissions with general plan update and some of their strategic goals. So that is in place technically as of today. I think that's it for what I have. I don't know if Councilmember Partita does not have anything to add. So if I think of anything else, I'll add it later.
All right, thank you. Any commissioner announcements? Commissioner Canning.
Kelly, is this where I can make my comment?
If you want. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a comment about, I read the minutes. I wasn't able to be here at the last meeting. It's a comment about the military equipment annual review. I was curious if, as part of our overview every year, we do that annual sort of inventory, and actually this year we even did a update earlier in the year. But one of the questions I had that maybe Mike might know the answer to is, if there's a database run by the state DOJ pursuant to the legislation that might allow us, if we were ever curious, to find out what other cities do or have in terms of military equipment. I guess there was a discussion about the need for certain kinds of equipment and that sort of stuff. And I always like to know if there's data about these sorts of things. So wondering what other cities do. Mike, do you know if there's any statewide database on military equipment by city, municipality, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Thank you, Robert, for the question. I am not aware that DOJ collects data and puts it on its database in the same way that they do with the RIPA data. I think the legislation was drafted a little different that doesn't make that requirement. And my experience has been, unfortunately, that there are different levels of transparency with regard to each jurisdiction providing that information. The law says it's supposed to be public, but finding it on any particular website can be a heck of an adventure. One thing I haven't looked to, though, is I do think that the advocacy group, I think it's called the American Friends Advocacy Group, which have been really sort of spending a lot of time sort of trying to watch this as an advocacy group. They may have some information that could be available. I just haven't looked at their website recently, but I found them to be a helpful resource in the past.
It's called, thank you, and it's called American Friends.
Yeah, I'll get you the website information during the meeting and get it to Kelly.
Thank you. Any other commissioner announcements? Go ahead.
So this is related a little, and I'll explain how it is, because it's like, wait a minute, that has to do with transportation. The Yolo County Transportation District did some outreach. Of course, it happened to be on the same day as that presidential debate, so they had good attendance, but not as much as they wanted to get input from folks on how they would like to see our transportation system in Yolo County and Davis with regards to bikes, walking, integration with, the buses, the way it relates to, Police Accountability Commission, is that I know in the past we've talked about, it's a slight relation, we've talked about making sure that there's good coverings at different locations. There are people that have been concerned about, people of color that have been concerned about being stopped and questioned on why they're standing at a bus stop while black. And so I don't know if, there's things we can do or recommend individually. We don't have to do it as a commission, but individually that might help facilitate that and make that better. I had it with me, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, what time is it? And I rushed in over here and I left them. So I'm going to forward that to Kelly, and perhaps Kelly could get that out to you all. There's a scan, you can scan it and then answer questions, okay, and submit it. And it would be very helpful to them if folks could do that and provide your input. And you could send it out to different groups too that you think would enjoy answering the question, the survey. That's it. Thank you.
And I see Mike has his hand raised in the Zoom. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. I just did some Googling around and I was right for once. I was wrong about the name though. It's called the group is called the American Friends Service Committee, and I will send you the website. But if you look on their website, they have links to each agency in California identifying what military equipment they reported as having. Wish we could have an AG that was as thorough and robust as this advocacy group is.
You can always count on Quakers. Any other commissioner announcements? So on two things on my own account. One, I guess, somewhat related to Commissioner Escamilla Greenwald's announcement. I don't know if I mentioned in the context of this commission, but there was an incident last year. I think I haven't mentioned it because it wasn't involving DPD. I think it was actually involving Yolo County Sheriffs, but where um, uh, YOLO bus driver seemingly motivated by homophobia called the police or, called 911 on a passenger to get them sort of thrown off of a bus. I think this happened during Pride Month last year. But like I said, it was on YOLO bus, and I think it was YOLO County Sheriffs that responded to the call. So that's why I think I haven't brought it up in this commission before. And then it reminds me of another thing that I have talked with some of you about on social media, but an incident where I was canvassing at a nearby apartment complex here in Davis, and the manager sort of threatened to call the police on myself and the other volunteer who was canvassing with us. And so kind of in line with your announcement, it makes me think about, I know we're going to talk about our outreach event later and what our subject and timing of that is going to be. But I know in the past we've considered doing an outreach event that's sort of focused on the various biases that might be present when people are calling for service, calling 911. And I think we ended up deciding that might be something overall that might be better placed with HRC or something. I think that was kind of the result of that conversation a couple of years ago. But anyway, it sort of reminds me in the number of ways that I think people with not the absolute worst intentions, perhaps not acting in the most informed space, people can sort of cause a number of sort of ripple effects in our community, when maybe erroneously calling the police anyway. And so we might need to do some more engagement and education on that. The second thing is that, I usually take my announcements for, observances throughout the month. And I just, scoured the internet trying to find monthly observances for July. I look forward to seeing what's going to be on the council's ceremonial calendar over the next couple of weeks. But anyway, all I could really find was 4th of July. So I do, as Kelly did in her announcement, look forward to seeing folks at the July 4th ceremony over at Community Park later on in the week, and hope that folks right. I hope that folks have a safe time. Right. Yes. And then, it's I think incumbent upon me to mention that, that's the day before July the 3rd is the national sort of chip your dog day, because unfortunately a lot of dogs do go missing on the 4th of July. And so for folks who have furry friends in the family, be sure that you make sure that they are chipped before the 4th. Anyway, seems like you didn't have any announcements, Councilman. Go ahead.
So I was reminded when we started talking about the surveillance technology that I saw the grand jury in Sacramento had this report on license plate readers and how the sheriff's department, and I think also the police department, was incorrectly sharing that information with out-of-state agencies. And I thought that was something that they could do. And so I was a little confused around what they thought was the inappropriate use of those license plate readers. So I don't know, Mike, if you have any information about that. But it is, sort of, I think, relevant to some of the questions that we've had here around that. And I want to make sure that we're not, inappropriately using, our license plate readers, because that's like, as I said, one of the things that has come up quite a bit. And the way that I understood it was that it was some state law that they had violated. And so I'm just not aware, and I wanted to understand that better. I think it was mostly the sheriffs, but also in some instances, the Sacramento City Police.
Yeah, specifically providing the information to out-of-state agencies that are trying to keep track of women who are coming to California in case they need either abortions or some type of related medical services. And so that's very concerning.
Yeah, I think that that was the fear,
Mhm.
that it could be used improperly that way. But as I said, I think that what I heard, and I can go back and reread the report, but what I heard was that that there was already some guardrails around like how that information could be used, and that they felt that it was being used outside of those guardrails. And I see that.
Yes, Mike is very dutifully raising his hand again. Take it away, Mike.
Stolen my thunder. This is going to be my 5 minutes of fame later on the agenda, but since you have raised it, I think now would be a better time to address it, and I'll just waive my time for later. You're absolutely right. The legislature passed a law that restricts sharing of information for the reason, largely for the reasons that were articulated by Commissioner Escamilla Greenwald, and that is a concern that if the information is shared with out-of-state agencies, that it could be misused. The Attorney General took a look at the state law and interpreted it in a way, and I can get you this Attorney General opinion, I think it's helpful, interpreted the law in a way to suggest that it would be inappropriate, in fact, illegal against state law, to share information with out-of-state entities for the very reason about potential misuse. Interestingly enough, the Attorney General opinion also says that it would be illegal to share information with any federal agency for the same concerns, maybe different concerns. I think most concerning was the potential misuse for those who do not have legal status. And the feds are in the business of enforcing those laws, as you know. So I was disappointed to see the report from the grand jury, to see that Sacramento apparently was in violation of those guardrails, both the city and the county. I believe that was reported in the Vanguard. But I'm going to be reaching out to my colleagues over there at the county and the city to see if I can learn more about it. But you're absolutely, you are hitting on something really important, which is if in fact this technology is going to be used, in my view, every ordinance or enabling ordinance allowing its use needs to have those guardrails, specifically instructing police agencies that you can't share it with out-of-state entities or the feds.
And then lastly, in world news, I saw that the Supreme Court, did a lot of things, but the one that I think stood out to me was the Grants Pass ruling on, camping and for our unhoused folks. And so I think that we need to be aware and think carefully about how to move forward.
Thank you. A very lively and informative announcement session. Anything further, folks? All right, going on to general public comment. This would be the time to address the commission on items that are not on our agenda, or if folks want to address us on things that are on the agenda and they imagine they cannot stay later on for that item, they can address us now. But without that, we can take it back to the commission for action on our consent calendars. Anyone want to make a motion for the approval of the June 2024 minutes? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion on the minutes from June of 2024? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, minutes approved. Moving to item 6. I know you said your thunder had been somewhat stolen, Mike, but I do want to invite you, if there were other topics you wanted to discuss with us, to do that now.
No, I appreciate it. And I really, the grand jury report was top of mind for me. And that's what I was intending to talk about. I'm glad Commissioner Griswold brought it up ahead of time. The only thing that I would say is that, sort of related to our, hiring report, I've seen some recent reports from, statewide agencies and national agencies suggesting that things are getting better, for police hiring issues. And it looks like there may have been some corner turning with regard to getting folks back into the police profession. We'll see. But that's a sense I get also from other agencies we work with.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike? I'll, if not, open to public comment for item 6. If not, then take it back to the commission. Any final comments, questions for Mike? All right, thank you as always, Mike, for keeping us informed and on top of the situation. All right, moving to item 7A, which is the recruitment hiring follow-up. So a subcommittee consisting of Commissioners Escamilla Greenwald, Vice Chair Griswold, and Commissioner Wilson, newest on the team, but eager to get involved. We're going to bring back to us some of their deliberations and discussions. Is there one of you who wants to lead off and tell us what y'all talked about?
Well, we didn't get a chance to meet,
Oh, okay.
but we do wanted to provide some ideas on, what, I mean, we've talked about it at length. We were thinking one thing we could do, so that we don't delay providing feedback is go around from commissioner to commissioner and have everyone list or name at least 2 or 3 things that they would like to see in the recruitment process of those seeking to be employed as peace officers with the city of Davis. That way it's, inclusive and everybody has an opportunity to give their 2 cents. I don't know how others feel about it, but.
Yes, I think that this is a good way to go forward so that we do begin formulating our feedback. Does any other comments from Commissioners Wilson or Vice Chair Griswold?
Yeah, I have gone and done a lot of web research looking at different cities and just looking at different recruiting things. The one thing I have not done yet is to go look at any journal articles or any studies that have been done. I have library access, but just haven't gotten to it yet. But as soon as I do, I will do that. So I've got some data that I've collected, but not shared with anybody yet.
Okay, so from the commission at large, thoughts? Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate Mike's report and also the comments that I read in the minutes about it. I'd like to just reiterate, since I wasn't at the last meeting, the notion of citizen participation in the hiring panel process. At some level, I think that would be really good for us to do. Whether it's this commission or some group of citizens chosen somehow, I don't really know. The other thing is, I'd really like to see the police get rid of voice stress analysis as part of their hiring process. It's got no scientific basis, and it's he'd use the word worthless throwing it out there, but it really doesn't, it's not something they should be using. It's not worth it. And I know that they've used it. I'm not sure they're using it with every new candidate, but I know that the chief said that they still rely on it. There's plenty of data out there that it's unreliable and not valid. So I would like to suggest to the department they get rid of that piece of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, I guess, at large, particularly for folks who were maybe not available, as Robert was saying, for the last meeting, but any, in addition to that, anything on the attributes that we want to sort of have as our 10 commandments of being a Davis police officer? Maybe.
Oh, that's right. Oh, my goodness.
I forgot the whole,
I know.
things that seem simple. Anyway.
I agree with Commissioner Canning. It would be nice to have public involvement with the hiring process. As there are ways that it can be done and still maintain confidentiality. There are other cities that do it, so it's not like it can't be done. It can be done. So I don't want us to use the excuse of, oh, HR laws and issues. It can be done with maintaining, confidentiality. I know that. I work in that field, and I know it can be done. And the other thing I would like to see is when they do the hiring, of course, more diversity. Where are they reaching out to? Are they reaching out to areas where there's a diverse population of people that have finished the academy? You know, if the one in West Sac doesn't provide the diversity, are there other areas that have academies where there is a larger, a more diverse population of those who finished the academy recently? And then thirdly, I would like to see recruitment of those peace officers that I know they have ongoing training, but it would be nice to hire some that have had training already in the area of community policing, law enforcement members, peace officers that truly believe in community policing, communicating with members of the public. You know, it's a different mentality than we're law enforcement and we say what goes and this is it, you know. There are those that truly do community policing and are involved, and we have some on the force now. It would be nice to expand upon that. I just think that when we have that, there's more trust built between the police department and members of the community. So it would be nice if they've had that training and also truly believe in community policing. So those are kind of questions that it would be nice to ask during the interview process and see what experience they have in that area. Thank you.
Commissioner Sherman?
Thank you. I'm wondering if Mike would be able to enlighten us about other jurisdictions where the community or individual citizens work with the police in the area of recruiting and training. I think those subjects kind of intertwine.
Don, I am not sure that community groups have been involved in recruiting. I do believe that community groups have certainly contributed and provided information to police departments on who they suggest or things that they might suggest with regard to where to look to find candidates beyond the traditional conduits, if you will. And certainly civilians have provided training to police agencies throughout the state, depending on their level of expertise and depending on the amenability of police departments to entertain such training. So for example, most of the training with regard to implicit bias is not conducted by police, but conducted by civilians.
Including one of my predecessors, our first chair of this commission, Judith McBride. Any, I'm sorry, Don, anything further? So, I do think this is probably worth a subcommittee, as a topic. Mm, I'll include myself in the history of members of this commission who talked about this idea. And I think what we've lacked is sort of a conduit, for trying to, do some of the, I guess, research that you're talking about, Commissioner Sherman, and kind of move this down the field. And so I do think we should consider that. But I don't want to divert us too much from the conversation about putting together this list of attributes. And so maybe once we get on the other side of public comment in this conversation, let's come back to the conversation about a subcommittee. Actually, I do have some thoughts I want to just interject in the middle of this conversation in terms of the attributes, and then we can kind of move forward from there. I think, as I was listening, Mike, to you and Stephen's presentation, it was really highlighted how much the department, at different eras, but particularly or overall, had emphasized hires from other agencies. And so given that seems that the department prefers that for a lot of reasons that I kind of might agree with, I think maybe other members of this commission, I see some gentle nods, might also agree with, that it might be good to kind of have two separate lists. Because I think a candidate who's a lateral hire versus a candidate who, has no police experience are really different kind of candidates. And what we're kind of looking for as an ideal fresh out of, wherever candidate, and an ideal lateral, I think, are maybe kind of different list of attributes. I don't know if that kind of concept makes sense to other people, but I was starting to put together a list of attributes that I think would be important for lateral hires. And as I only got to two of them as I was trying to pay attention to what y'all were saying at the same time. But I wrote down a demonstrated capacity to intervene positively. I know what a lot of people have been, I've just sort of reverse engineered that from what we've been concerned about as a world from some of the incidents that we've seen, is situations where something very obviously bad was going on. And there was a cadre of 4 or 5 different officers just standing around with their hands in their pockets. And so I think at least as I've listened to Davis residents' police concerns over the years, I know that one of the things that I imagine if we polled Davis residents would value in a hire, particularly a lateral hire, is someone with a demonstrated capacity to intervene in a situation and make sure that, department policy is being followed, and policing is being conducted in a way that's in accordance with the community's values. And then second, and sort of, I'm somewhat leading on an ideal lateral hire would be an officer that had a demonstrated record of de-escalation in their policing engagement. But like I said, I was trying to listen to y'all's contributions too, so I only got to 2 items. But I think it would be helpful to maybe separate out 2 different lists: a list of ideal attributes for lateral hires, and a list of ideal attributes for sort of fresh out of the academy sort of hires. I'm not really sure what the proper terminology would be.
And I appreciate you making that distinction too. And I think that was something in the back of my mind as I was coming up with some attributes. One of them would be, and for somebody who would be a lateral hire potentially, a demonstrated commitment to policing that is as racially just as it can be. And so it'd be like in looking through somebody's record, if there's a number of incidents that are showing racial injustice, that would be a red flag in terms of hiring. But if it were somebody new, I mean, maybe in their previous work or different things that they're committed to, a commitment to racially just policing. Secondly, I would say a commitment to prioritizing a nonviolent response to situations as much as possible. And again, that might come out in previous police work or previous work in other settings. Echoing what you were just saying, Commissioner Horton, someone who has the ability to de-escalate, somebody with really good people skills, who knows how to approach a situation and approach someone as a person and to try to de-escalate. Fourth, I would say an understanding of some of the common issues faced by our homeless population and having a sensitivity to that and the stresses that people are under. And then the last thing I want to bring up would be someone with a an understanding of training in mental health issues and what might be occurring. I know in my former work as a pastor of a church, we all undertook like a mental health first aid course, which I found to be really enlightening. And in a lot of ways, that was actually a means of avoiding calling in police when someone was in a mental health crisis that didn't actually involve criminal justice per se. But I think some of those same principles, if someone who's interested in a policing position were able to apply those, I think that would be really useful as well. And I wanted to follow up to one of yours. You were saying the ability to intervene when, I just wanted to clarify, when policing was not being conducted according to policies? You're saying like intervene on, like one officer being able to step up when another
Yeah, I mean,
officer is.
I should just drive a little bit more directly in. I'm talking about like a George Floyd situation.
Yes.
So yeah, when
Wanted to
something
clarify.
is very obviously outside of the law, one, but outside of department practice, two, that this is someone who's going to say, hey, bruh, this is not what we do in this department.
I second that as well. Thank you.
Other comments about ideal attributes, Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, thank you. So it is now a legal duty of police officers in California to intervene when they see a fellow officer who is violating somebody's civil rights. That is on the books now. I don't have the code section. I think it's 835A of the Penal Code, although I was trying to look at it and couldn't find it. But I think since I have the mic, I will also add that at this point regarding community policing, which is an important subject, I think we might benefit from if you just go online, you can easily find this post, of course, is the Police Officer Standards and Training Agency in California. And that post creates the training materials for all peace officers and all training in all police academies. And if you just Google post LD3, LD stands for learning domain, it is called Principled Policing in the Community. Every police recruit in California must read this and go through training on principled policing in the community. They also are required to go through training on de-escalation. Now, of course, these are novices who, and this is just an introduction, it's just the tip of the iceberg, but you know, in terms of not reinventing the wheel, post learning domain 3 talks about it. You could read it, see what you think of what post is mandating regarding principled policing in the community for kids going through the academy today.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Commissioner Myers, because I think that would be, in terms of language, perhaps a good basis, because I don't want to speak for you, Vice Chair Griswold, in terms of the things that you laid out, but what I'm looking for is, you know, particularly for a lateral hire, this may be different for a first timer, but that, you know, we understand that these are your legal obligations, but do you have a demonstrated part of your sort of record where you are engaged or where you are upholding this this part of the training? And so yeah, that might provide us some wording that'll be a good scaffolding, or not sure what the best analogy is for that.
Yeah, I actually have a question. When you're talking about lateral training, are you talking about like from West Sac to Davis, not like there is a lot of hiring that's done within the Davis department where somebody has been there in one capacity, then goes through the other training?
Right.
So I'm not sure which one you
Yeah,
mean.
no, thank you. So what I was describing at the beginning of my comments was that in Mike and Steven's report, the hiring audit, they described, and I saw some gentle and I see again some gentle shaking of head from Mike, that it seemed like the department had a preference for, as you know, the West Sacramento example that you described, hiring someone who had a previous history with the West Sacramento Police Department, because that person, I think as Mike described or Steven described, they already have a demonstrated history that we can look into, and that's kind of one of the reasons the department has a preference for that kind of hire versus someone who's fresh out of the academy.
Yeah, they actually do hire from within, meaning the fact somebody might have been in there and on dispatch or something. So I just wanted to clarify specifically because they are a known entity. Granted, they may not be a known entity on the street, but they are a known entity.
certainly known to the department, yeah, as a character person. You know, you could come as a character witness for them at a trial somewhere. Hopefully that wouldn't be necessary. Any other comments here on the ideal attributes? Commissioner Sherman?
Yeah, I'm thinking that this is a very large issue, and not necessarily unique to policing. The entire field of HR, human relations, and that people hiring in all of our economy and social activity, commercial activity, everything. This is a rapidly, first of all, it's a very complex science. If it even is a science at this point, so much is really undetermined and learning as we go, and we're changing policies constantly, because it relates to every aspect of our culture. It relates to all of the attributes of individuals who come up for consideration. So it might be, again, this is something that Mike can probably share some experience with us. The extent to which a police department can employ experts, to the degree, again, I'm tempering my comments because I would have to say to the degree that anyone can be an expert, but this is a field that is getting a lot of study and attention in all aspects of our society, all the relationships that are critical in all of our lives every day. And now we're applying this specifically in a very difficult area. It's almost like thinking about soldiers in wartime, thinking about the command of military organizations and how these decisions are made up and down the line and the various responsibilities. And we experience ourselves, and we certainly read in the news every day about bad decisions. We don't hear that much about the good decisions, but we certainly hear a lot about the bad decisions that are made regarding the activities among people, the relationships among people, the communications that take place, the concept of empathy, for example, which keeps coming up to my mind in every discussion of this kind that we have, the ability of, again, to specify what we're doing, to say the ability of a police officer under stress, in battle or potentially in battle, to act wisely and carefully and empathetically. It's a very complex thing, and it isn't. It takes. There probably is a lot more study that's been going on than what we're aware of, and I'm wondering if, I don't know. I don't have a specific suggestion, but I'm sharing my confusion or fear or dissatisfaction with the concept that it is a very difficult problem, and one that we want to be helpful and constructive. I find myself falling back, as I usually do in a situation like this, asking for more research and sharing of information and learning what we can from the experience of the people that we already have, the people in our police hierarchy, and then from outside as well. It's nothing we can sit here in a commission meeting and make decisions about. It's really very complicated, but we need to be aware of it. And in fact, this is a topic we were having our earlier subcommittee meeting about our subject matter for an outreach meeting this fall. And maybe these ideas can be brought together somehow. It's very complicated, very important, and difficult. And we need help on this.
Yes, very complicated. Oh, Commissioner, right, a lot of responses here. Commissioner Myers.
Sure. Another resource that you might want to consider is a publication again by Post in 2021 called Post Use of Force Standards and Guidelines, which on page 20 discuss the legal obligation as well as the ethical obligation, the legal obligation of peace officers to intervene when they see excessive force. This is the law in California. I'm not saying it's, like any law, it's always followed, but this is not news to the policing profession. And so it's relatively new, a legal duty to intervene. But it's not new, and it's discussed in Post publications, and people in the academy are trained on it. People who are done with the academy are trained on it. Precisely because of what happened in George Floyd's situation.
Commissioner Bliss.
I agree with what you were saying earlier, Don, and that this is very complex, having hired people my whole life. But I guess I'm curious what our current police department is looking for as far as attributes. I would like to have a relationship with them rather than come to them and say, here are the attributes we think you should be looking for, without really finding out what are the attributes they look for in both the new person and the others. If we're going to bring it to the community, it just seems that we want to flesh out what may already be there or comment on whatever is there. And if there isn't anything, then I think it's easier to talk about what we might want to look for. I'm looking at someone who's a good listener and open-minded, but they're all case studies kind of thing.
I think that is a reasonable approach. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think another approach could be like trying to not necessarily let this process or this list of attributes be driven by what already exists. And I don't know, the kind of thinker I am, the moment I see somebody else's list, I'm starting to draw from that rather than kind of organically come up with what I think is kind of the best fit for whatever our circumstances are. I'm not, like I said, I'm not a disagreeer of that route. Commissioner Vice Chair Griswold.
And some of the reason that we're doing this now is because at our last meeting, Mike Giannacco and Steve Connolly in their report back to us that they presented last time about the hiring audit, they actually suggested that this commission list. I mean, I'm reading, from the minutes from last meeting, that they recommend the commission list out the types of attributes they think are important in an officer. So with their experience of having read through everything that they're doing and knowing all they do know in doing that hiring audit, they asked us to do this. So that's why we're just a little background in terms of why we're doing it now.
So I have a few thoughts, and then I think we should maybe at least open up an opportunity for public comment and then sort of take us back to the commission. So one thing, Commissioner Sherman, you brought up in your last comment kind of the fact that we, certainly hear about the problems, but we don't really hear about the good decisions. And that's another thing that we've talked about for a long time on this commission. I'm also thinking about that in the cross section of what we were talking about in terms of some of the possible attributes. There's the lovely event. I can't think of what that organization is called that runs it, but it's called the Upstander Carnival, where we, salute folks who sort of stand up to bullying in our community. And we again, we're talking about, kind of all throughout this conversation, the duty to intervene, and how that's a legal requirement, but how we want to see that that's demonstrated. And again, as you were saying, how we don't really talk about the positive as much as we talk about the negative. I think we got to think about ways of saluting, the officer upstander of the year, or other things that we can do to sort of let people know that, hey, you're doing, you're not only doing what is sort of, the minimum requirement, but you're going, above and beyond, and our community recognizes that's what you're doing. And we're not only going to show up with our pitchforks and torches when the department does something wrong, but we're gonna make sure that we are saluting officers who are operating effectively. Do you have something on that? Okay.
I did. There's
oh, go ahead.
Well, I'm assuming you're talking about KB.
A very good communication with principals and students at on different campuses. And she's going to be retiring. I'm hoping that there's somebody with that type of belief system and interaction with administrators as well as students that they find that's going to be taking her place, because that's the kind of policing we want. That's interactive and engaging, and that's a big loss to us. But I agree with what you're saying. She was outstanding.
Yeah, no, I do recall seeing the announcement of her soon retirement. But yeah, so that's one thing that I want to mention. I do think we need to figure out, and this is not sort of a direct item for this conversation, but in general, I think we, in the recommendations that we make, need to find ways of making sure that that's a part of the practice, that not just something that we're thinking about occasionally and sporadically, but that's something that I think is a part of what we do as a city. One thing I also want to talk about, we talked about, various people's experience with hiring practices. And I always go back to, some of you know that I started some of my experience in sort of civic engagement in student government at my community college. And during that period of time, we had a lot of consternation between the administration and the various other constituent groups, the academic senate, the, faculty union, the classified union, the student government. And so when our president of the college decided to leave at the end of my second year, they engaged in this very well done, in my perspective, community-driven process of, not only consulting with all the constituent groups in terms of what the highest possible attributes for a good candidate for the next president of El Camino College would be, but also engaging those various constituent groups in the interview process, to go back to our sort of previous topic about sort of civilian or community participation in the DPD hiring process. So I think there are, we talked about how this is very complicated and multifaceted, but I do think there are sort of, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, because there is some type of a wheel out there that I think provides a model for a good community-driven process of developing attributes and engaging in the hiring process. I guess this is the conversation after public comment, but I do want to talk to our members of the existing commission about how they want to proceed forward. But I guess I want to open up to public comment if there is any. And if not, we will take it back to the commission. Let's see, Commissioners Wilson, Escamilla Greenwald, and Vice Chair Griswold, any thoughts as to how y'all want to move forward? Obviously, the cake is not fully baked here. We got a couple of attributes here. It seems like there's maybe some willingness to sort of divide this into a sort of a first timer and a lateral hire, then maybe even Commissioner Wilson, with your comment, sort of a lateral hire from the non-sworn side too. There's maybe a third category there. Colleagues, how do y'all want to proceed here?
Maybe I'm in the minority, but really doesn't seem super complicated to me. Like, I don't think we're tasked with like revamping how the police hire people. I mean, that's not our role. I think what the way I read what we are tasked with is exactly what Mike Giannacco presented to us last time. Just list out some attributes we think are important. And I feel like we've done that. And if people have more ideas, we can kind of circle around and see if there's any more ideas next time. I mean, I believe Kelly is taking notes, and I'd be happy to,
I believe.
we've got a list. Like, I don't know, to me, it's not like a huge project. I'm happy to look over the list and, maybe some of them will be divided out. I think some of them are going to be common to whether you're a lateral hire or a new hire. Some of them might be more specific to a person's background. And, I'm happy to kind of branch that out from the regular notes that are going to come from our meeting. I'm happy to take a look at that, put them in a different document and sort of separate them out a little bit and then bring that back to our next meeting. I mean, I don't know if there's a more official way. I'll send it to you first and you could disseminate it or.
Yeah, so what I can do is tomorrow or the next day, send out the notes that I am taking to the subcommittee. And then y'all can take a look at that. It sounds like Commissioner Wilson had some additional things that she was looking at. Maybe there's something the subcommittee wants to add. Can bring it back to the full commission at the next meeting. And if you're comfortable with it, we can send it over to the police department, once you're ready. Just because you send something over once doesn't mean that you can't ever talk about it again. If you have other things that come to mind, then we can address those as they come up.
Thank you.
Is it even appropriate for us to go to the police department and ask them what their criteria is? I mean, because that might be a place to start too.
I guess I would ask if, if Mike in his work on the audit, if they had a particular list or something that they already have, or if we should, I'm happy to ask the chief if they've got something that they use beyond the post requirements.
Was here for that because he focused on that, but I do not know. I think that there is certainly some metrics that the chief and others in the hiring decision have, but I think it's all in their head. I don't think that they have a formal list like the one that I am proposing, or even an informal list. I think that my experience, and I don't want to speak for Chief Pytel necessarily, he might actually have a list, but it didn't come up in our discussions with him, as far as I know.
Well, I'm happy to check in with the department tomorrow, and if there is one, I'll send it to the subcommittee. If there is, or whatever response they have, I'll provide that to the subcommittee.
All right. Any other thoughts on our tasks going forward? Cool. All right. Moving on to 7B, our discussion of our fall outreach event. The subcommittee of myself, Commissioner Canning, and Commissioner Sherman met right before this evening's meeting, right here on this dais. Either one of my colleagues want to summarize? Go ahead.
Yeah, we talked about having the outreach to the community around the same time we did last year, in the range of somewhere around the 9th to the 23rd, I think it was, of October. We have to check on dates. Certainly, we think that having it at the Veterans Center is a good idea, but we need to find out when it's available. We weren't really certain about what kind of topics. Some things that come up, the idea of policing and technology and public safety, sort of as some sort of combination. 3 years ago, we did a Know Your Rights presentation. There's no reason why we couldn't do that again. Things have changed a little bit. People may have different concerns. People weren't around then. We could do that again if we wanted. In terms of how it will be set up, we were thinking maybe a panel of a few people, 3 people and a moderator perhaps, or having a good speaker. Of course, it's now July. We would need to find that person and find out if they're available. So, like I said, we didn't fall into specific topics, but we wanted to bring back bring back to the full commission just for ideas about things that people might like to do, things that we haven't done before. Last year, I mean, one of the sentiments was it'd be great to get more than 35 people, but that's, I think, even have 35 or 40 people coming to a outreach for this commission, I think is not a bad thing. That's 30 people who didn't come, or didn't know about us before. So And that, I thought last year's was pretty successful. That's all.
Thank you. Question, oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'll bring up again what I brought up last time, as a potential idea for a topic, to think about a nonviolent, response option. And I know we do have something around, a team that might be available, as an alternative to armed officers, but to kind of explore that further and what that might look like. And I know there are a lot of examples, I've studied this and written on it some in other communities of, community organizing around alternatives to calling the police. Kind of coupled with that, which could be a completely different thing or might go hand in hand. What I was referring to earlier as a mental health first aid type of training, which maybe individuals in the community would like to take part in, and as a model for like what a nonviolent response might look like. So there's a couple things that are on my mind.
When you were talking about the alternatives at the beginning of your comment, were you talking about the co-responder clinicians? Is that who you were talking
Yes.
about? Okay.
And I don't know enough about them, whether that's like a model that can be expanded or changed or whatnot. But yes, things along that line. And my understanding was like they're not available that often, or there aren't that many, or something. I heard it was sort of quite limited.
The county's moving to the crisis, what's the name? I'm blanking on the name. Can someone help me?
Well, the county started with a Crisis Now model that they proposed. There have
Right.
been so many changes to the state budget and to state laws that Crisis Now it's not the same. So they're on some version that is not the original version. I think I've lost count. To answer your question about the co-responders or the embedded clinicians, the city has two what we call embedded clinicians. They're actually county employees, but they're embedded at the police department. They don't necessarily respond to calls alone, but they will go out with officers, or in some case follow up on a particular situation. It depends on the situation and their the clinicians' safety thresholds and comfort levels. Thank you. But that has been, we believe, successful in what they're able to do. But they do work, I don't want to say an 8 to 5 schedule, but they do work a regular sort of schedule. So when they're not available or on, then there is nobody available. And because there are only 2 of them, we're not covering 24/7. So when we had only 1, they were here, that person was here like Monday through Thursday, 10-hour shifts.
I would just imagine that it might be, a useful resource for our community, whether it's like someone's homeless and they're yelling, maybe calling the police is not what's needed, or, the kind of stuff you see on Nextdoor. There's a Black person in my neighborhood, like that stuff that like, and these are like cliches almost, these kind of Karen type actions, but, whether we could kind of, I don't know, just raise awareness around other opportunities and start organizing around other opportunities when maybe the police aren't the people to call, and maybe they have things that are even like more, that they're more suited to, that we're actually drawing police resources away from to handle situations that might be handled by somebody else in the community or an organization in the community that would be better qualified, better suited, and might be better trained in de-escalation, whereas sometimes I know it can be triggering to somebody, especially when they're in the midst of perhaps a mental health episode, when an armed, uniformed officer shows up. That can often escalate instead of de-escalate.
I know that one of the things that people often ask me about is, going back to the ups and downs of Crisis Now, is sort of where is it now? Number one. And then also going back to what you were originally talking about is, hey, I've heard about these co-responder clinicians. What exactly do they do? What's the arrangement? What is their sort of procedure? And so I'm not sure if this is enough meat on the bones for a full outreach event, but we clearly do need to do some more. And by we, I mean kind of a whole city need to do some more education and outreach about sort of what that is and how that works in our community. Because I think there's a lot of people who who you would think of as maybe frequent consumers of mental health services in our community, but are maybe not aware of how that works. And I've had a bunch of people, even in the past couple of months, come up to my farmer's market table and ask me, okay, yeah, hey, I've heard about this, and what, how does this work exactly? Did I see, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with Kelly's information on the crisis maybe model that we're working on. As I understand it, Kelly, also like after the beginning of the year, there was like some changes in state requirements that technically we're supposed to have 24/7. We have like, right, 8 to 5 or whatever, not including weekends, but we're supposed to cover mental crisis 24/7. And the county has been charged with making that happen, which is why the crisis now has, is trying to find its footing and trying to figure out what it's going to be. So I do think that this is a really good topic to sort of give education to folks, because if we don't understand where we're at, then, it's important to have everybody understand where we're at. And I think that the way that the county is trying to meet that 24/7 is through like EMT stuff and like a hotline, and like they're just kind of trying to patchwork it together right now until it's a little more robust. But it's good to know that that is a requirement and that there is somewhere that you can call, and that there are things that you can do. And I really like the idea of, sort of like a pamphlet on, things to do besides call the police, right? Or things to do if your neighbor is in crisis. And this is actually something that me and Babu Vaitla, who are on a subcommittee on mental health, have talked about, is like, probably the low-lying fruit around, helping folks in crisis is communication and getting information into people's hands. So I think I do like this idea of giving that information out. And I don't know if it's enough for an entire presentation, but I think if you dig a little, that there will be enough there.
I agree that it may not be a presentation, but I'm thinking as I'm listening. What? Yeah. Can't hear me? I was just thinking that it could be perhaps there's a half hour of a list of different groups and we could have tables and people sitting there. I mean, we talked about people not knowing the track system for people who might wander. I mean, there could be all kinds of resources for situational things that go on that people don't know about. And if you had people there representing the groups, people could move from spot to spot. It would be a very different type of a program. Right, in Davis for homeless, mental health, Alzheimer's. I mean, there could be a number of things that we could set up. It's just a different way of looking at it. I don't know.
Yeah, and it might kind of, I don't know if this is what you're suggesting, it might require kind of a little bit of a shakeup of our usual format of kind of 2 speakers and then some Q&A at the end, which has kind of been the general sort of shape of our outreach events going back to our 2019 one. So yeah, no, contrary to what I said about there maybe not being enough meat on the bone, if we sort of broaden it out into public safety resources that could be, Vice Chair Griswold, kind of some of what you're talking about as to at least what exists now in terms of 911 alternatives, but particularly Councilmember Partita, as to what you were saying, the response, particularly to mental health crisis, I think is something that, black, white, there's really no cohort of our community that's not touched by that. And, my mind, as a member of this commission always goes back to that holiday police involved shooting that we had, what was that, 2 or 3 years ago, where goodness, were there some crisis mental health resources available, that situation might not have ended the way that it did. for that family. But anyway, so, yeah, I think there could be something, here.
I would also think that we could include homelessness as far as some of the,
Oh, yeah.
like Mark's Place, different places that people, and different programs.
Mary, could you
When-
talk into your microphone?
Oh, I'm so.
Sorry, it just doesn't pick it up if you
Oh,
don't.
okay. So, just the homelessness and that different things like the winter shelter and different groups that you could contact, or our homeless outreach programs that people don't necessarily know about.
Yeah, I almost feel like there'd be more than enough. Yeah.
Telling people to go home. Commissioner Canning?
Yeah, I mean, I was just writing down things as, you know, when we're talking about having tables that people can circulate through to get information about public safety and some of the issues that we see in our community. There's lots of issues that we could talk about. We could talk about domestic violence, prevention, mental health issues. NAMI, for instance, is, of course, very involved in that in Yolo County. Things like that, domestic violence, gun safety, violence prevention issues, things like that. Think ways that, you know, that promote public safety.
So we do a we do a continuing education training for our CASA volunteers every month, just to give them various things to be aware of to help support their foster youth. And I think 2 or 3 months ago, our presenter was NAMI Solano County, and their topic was sort of presenting, going back to how important it is to kind of just share information about some of the programs and resources that are available. They were there to present on their peer support group, which obviously, as folks know, is very active with the NAMI Yolo County chapter as well. And so that could certainly be a thing that we include. It may be format wise that we could do an event where, you know, folks come in, you know, they get their lemonade or, you know, and cookie, and, you know, folks give folks give a very limited, you know, from the various organizations. Hey, you know, hey, we're NAMI. This is what we do. This is the sort of the contact information in which you can engage us. After the sort of opening sort of comments from each of the organization, come find us at the back, and then we sort of have each of the groups do that, and sort of like it's more of a resource fair than it is sort of a talking, sort of lecturing outreach event that some of our
Educational.
right.
But I was thinking too, like they each give maybe a 15-minute kind of summary or something.
Well, significantly
less.
less than 15 minutes. Yes.
Oh, well, I'd appreciate a bit more, 5,
Well,
10.
it's just that when
but-
you start to add up.
Yeah,
you know,
depending on, I mean, this can be figured out,
Mhm.
details, but I mean, depending on how many, I mean, I've listed like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, as we've been talking.
So I
So if
think-
they each gave like, let's say 5, I just wanted to have a bit more substance than like, there's tables,
Mhm.
talk to them. Like, I don't know, just they each, anyway, I'm trying to support you. The minutes we can figure out
Yeah,
later,
yeah.
I
but
think
each give a
group-
little presentation and then people can visit ones they're most interested in, get more info. And then there could be a coming back together potentially to kind of like share what you learned. What are you excited about? Connect with each other around, you know, keeping in touch around, oh, I want to really get involved in this. I want to get involved in that. And maybe there's even another event where we kind of like circle back, have people been working on these things in the meantime or something.
I
But this is
think,
more of a kickoff than an ending.
Mhm.
I think that the groups could submit a paragraph, and we could have a handout, which we could give to people when they come in, that gives a little more than their blurb would. And a contact number and a website number on the handout, so that they would already have something they could start going around with.
And I'll add to the conversation because it happened as our subcommittee meeting was concluding and people were walking in. I was saying that, you know, I went to the housing forum that the city held at just around the corner of Davis Community Church not too long ago. And it was a great event. And Kelly was one of the panelists. But the only one of the few things I didn't like about it is it was just far too long. Because it was similar to at least to the skeleton of the idea that we're talking about, where it had a lot of great people with a lot of great things to contribute to the conversation. It was just like, goodness, I can't be here for 13 hours in this lovely building, Davis Community Church. But so I think trying to be sure that we figure out whatever the sweet spot is of giving them an opportunity to present an overall sort of, this is who we are and this is what we do. And then kind of like you were saying a second ago, people can sort of drive forward to what's maybe on their mind or on their heart or what's of most interest to them, sort of in the air turned off, what in the sort of resource fair portion of the event. Yes.
I'm not sure what the extra noise is.
Yeah.
It's a ghost. I just want to make one clarification, just make sure to give credit where credit is due. The city didn't actually host that event. That was put on by several different community groups, including Davis Can, Interfaith Justice, et cetera. So
The event that the city participated in. Okay. Any further thoughts with regard to? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I have a thought.
Uh-huh.
So I still think that maybe you could have a speaker that maybe isn't a little bit from each of the groups, but rather someone that could speak to how they all intersect, right? And like how, why it's important to be educated about what the resources are. Because you're right. I mean, domestic violence and mental health and the other things, the other issues, they're all interrelated. And I think it's really important for people to know like where to go. And for me, I think that what is closest to my mind is what happened, with the stabbings not that long ago. And the fact that this person didn't live alone, lived with roommates, and they were unaware or they were aware and didn't know like what to do. So I think it is important to have that information out there.
Yeah, regardless of this person having roommates, they seemed certainly, at least they felt alone.
Mhm.
And that did seem like that was a contributing factor to what happened.
I'm glad you brought that up, Councilwoman Partita. The idea of, kind of like maybe one speaker at the beginning that lays the groundwork. Like, why are we having this? What's the importance of this? How does it intersect with the goals of Police Accountability Commission, et cetera? Why do we need, alternatives to calling 911 or learning about these public safety resources? Kind of like lay the foundation and then let the different representatives speak a bit. I think that's a great idea.
I think we have some really good direction. See, this is what we said we were going to do. Right. Yeah. Who needs us? Any other thoughts about the subject? And I do want to circle back in terms of the timing. Kelly? Oh, okay.
actually, I was gonna ask. I will be happy to check on availability of the vets, and I assume that we're talking about the multipurpose room like we
Yes.
used previously. And I'm also assuming, but want to clarify, we're talking about if it's on a weekday, then it would be in the evening.
Yes.
And do you want me to check weekends as well? I wasn't sure what you had in mind.
I mean, my only concern in terms of weekend, I think that sort of opens up availability for sort of people to attend, which is a positive factor. I just don't want to make city staff work on the weekend. That's kind of my main concern. So what now?
There's,
You don't have to worry about this particular city staff, and our Vets Memorial staff work when there's an event. Their schedules are flexible.
Yes, okay. Is Commissioner Sherman?
I think there's a lot of competition on weekends, especially in October, when you have both baseball and football going on and college ball and the NFL and everything else. It's harder to get people away from their TVs and into a public event than it would be on during the week, an evening during the week.
You can't tell them that, Cecilia. You can't,
Why do we have DVR?
you can't tell the sports ball people that, Cecilia. So
But we have
and
to
just
be realistic about other people's preferences.
right, just to clarify, we were talking about those 3 Wednesdays. Obviously, the other weekdays are I guess fine too, if there's some availability at Vets Memorial. Of course, you know, Tuesdays become complicated in civic land, so Thursdays, of course, and so you, anyway, Wednesday is only complicated in other cities. I think West Sac meets, West Sac City Council meets on Wednesday or something like that. Anyway, doesn't have anything to do, well, Mike might have something to do that evening. Commissioner
Does
Sherman?
it have to be in October necessarily? I'm thinking that it is such a busy month, especially this year. There'll be so much going on and other things on people's minds that maybe if we moved it up to November, frankly, after the election, and had it on a weekday evening, that we might do better.
Well, so, you know, I will. Commissioner Eskimi and Greenwald and I will certainly be dehydrated during the month of October for other reasons outside of this commission. But as I mentioned in the middle of our subcommittee meeting, you know, we certainly want to be post the last week of September, because, you know, our goal with sort of every Davis community event is to try to incorporate the campus as possible. And they don't get back until I think that last week of September. You know, I will say, as someone who I think folks are probably thinking of as they're, you know, thinking about pushing things until after Election Day, I don't necessarily I don't think that's necessary for my calendar. I don't want to speak for Commissioner Escamilla Greenwald. And, you know, I, as someone with, again, in my other civic life, a very large team of UC Davis interns, the deeper you get into the quarter calendar, the less anyone at UC Davis wants to talk to you about anything, because their own life on campus becomes more intense. And so I think the earliest we can do something in the quarter calendar, if we're trying to engage the campus, particularly the student community, is the better. And so I continue to think that sort of a mid to early October timeline is sort of the best. It's obviously there's some downsides to it, but I think it's the best that we can come up with.
Yeah, just for information's sake, the quarter starts on the 25th of
Yes.
September.
Yes. I think that's a Tuesday, last Tuesday, right, of the month?
Monday.
And I think we
Okay,
should
fifth
avoid the
Monday.
Jewish high holidays, which are
Oh, yeah.
early to mid.
They early this year?
Well, Rosh Hashanah will start on October 2nd, and then we'll cover the 3rd to 4th, and then Yom Kippur
Yom
begins on the
Kippur.
11th, and going into the 12th. So, I mean, we can avoid those, but I'm
Right.
just saying, I think that's important.
Well, are we good on the 9th?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, because what our suggestion was if possible, the 9th, 16th, or the 23rd.
I think 16th or 23rd would be better. I mean, the whole thing is the days of awe through,
Oh, I see.
all the
Okay.
way through.
Yeah, yeah.
I
They,
see. Okay,
so
okay, I
they're
got it.
more than one day.
So maybe 16th, 23rd, 30th? Well,
16th, 23rd. I would say.
Halloween?
well, yeah, I don't, 30th is a little too, you know, I don't want to limit us to 16 or 16th or 23rd, but hopefully
Why not?
if one of those days were available, I think that would be good.
Yeah, let me check the availability of the center and see, you know, I'll look at basically any day that's not a Tuesday.
Or Thursday.
Well, I'll look you don't want me to look at Thursdays?
No, yeah.
Oh, right. Sorry. School board.
What's on
board.
Thursday? Oh, okay.
What about a non-school board Thursday? Do you guys change them or you guys keep pretty consistent? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let me see what's available and then I'll circle back with the subcommittee tomorrow.
There's
Thanks,
5
Karen.
Thursdays in October.
Yes. Okay, any further direction to the subcommittee with regard to timing or subject matter for the event? Hopefully, you know, I mentioned there's more for our newer commissioners, but you know, we'll try our best as a subcommittee to drive this forward in the meantime between the commission meetings, and have some progress to report to y'all at the next meeting.
September.
Well, I'll talk about that at long range. Anything further? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions there. Oh, and here we are to what I was just talking about at long range count. I'm sorry. Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I was just thinking that I forgot that. Please go ahead. If you could.
was simply that the last one that you held, it really was very successful because 35 is a large number and larger than what you usually had. But we wrote things down that did not get addressed. And I wondered, and I didn't see them addressed later through your minutes and so on. So I wondered if you still have those, if that shouldn't be a way to also assess what the public said. We wish you'd look at this, or you'd tell us about that. So that was one thing, that if those are still available, there's a public input that you might want to look at. One of the second things was is that I noticed when you're talking about something like yellow crisis response, and that our own embedded counselors or responders, you know, we don't really describe them well, possibly because we don't know what they're doing and how they work. And it was news to me that there were 2 10-hour shifts, you know. It was not news to me that there was not a 24-hour response, but, you know, we don't know that. But that's one of the major things that the public seems to constantly say is that, well, how do you get in contact with them? Or you call the police. That's how you get in contact with them. Even for our own 2 embedded people, you call the police, you know. So that's where there is a real need. If there's another avenue, let us know of it and make it a common knowledge, you know, and repeated, so that people start using that avenue if it is truly available to them. Okay. Though I just wanted to mention those things in looking at what are your subjects, what might be important to people. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And you know, I think there could be a real benefit to us taking a look at some of those cards, those feedback, or I'm sorry, those question cards from the last outreach event. Excuse me, because I think those are correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly. Available to us now.
I don't think I kept the cards, but I'm pretty sure I put everything together in a synopsis, so I can provide that.
Okay. Because, you know, I think someone mentioned earlier, you know, the possibility of folks, you know, wanting to get together and sort of share and have conversation about issues that they're going with after perhaps this event. And I definitely recall, you know, we almost kind of did have to kind of shoo people out of the last event because people were staying around and talking about, oh, my catalytic converter was stolen, you know, 8 months ago, and you know, this is how they stole it. And so people were, you know, sharing stories and having conversation with people about the topic, the property crime topic of the last outreach event. And so that is something that we should kind of take a look through. Other comments or questions last minute here? All right, now going over to agenda item 8, long range calendar. The thing that I was about to ask about in the last item, did we officially decide on August? I know that's sort of a question each year, and so since I've gone through so many of them, I can't really remember if we had that conversation this year.
So it is standard for commissions to recess at the same time that council does. So for most commissions, that's August. There's a couple of commissions that meet at the end of the month. And so sometimes for them, it's the end of July often. So unless there is a specific need, then we ask that commissions recess in August. So.
Let's see. Other items, or not other items, but items to request for future meetings, Commissioner Sherman?
Yes, I'm wondering, Kelly, if I don't know what your system is or what the limitations are. Would it be possible for us to have the minutes of our meeting earlier than 2 days or 3 days before the meeting? We get them on the Friday before the Monday, and then and only the weekend in between. It would be very, I would find it much more convenient and helpful if we had, say, another week of the minutes before our meeting.
I can certainly send out the draft minutes earlier, and then I'll send them out again, and they may be slightly more refined, but I will send them out again with the packet when that comes out, because that becomes part of the
I would,
official
I can
record.
only speak for myself,
Yeah,
but
no, I'm happy to send them out earlier.
convenient.
Other items for future agendas? Alrighty, anyone want to make a motion for adjournment for the meeting? Is there a second?
Second,
Any further discussion on that? All those approving that, say aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Meeting adjourned, folks. With minutes to spare.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Have a good evening.
Have a good month, everyone. Have a good 4th.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Stay cool.